The Titanic. You know the name, you know the story. Or at least, you think you do. We all picture this grand, majestic ship, a true marvel of its time. But here's the thing that's always gotten me. How did a ship that took 3 years to build just disappear in under 3 hours? It doesn't add up. So today, we're going to break down the 6 critical mistakes that led to one of the most infamous disasters in history. You have to understand, before it ever set sail, the Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a symbol. People called it the Unsinkable ship, and they weren't just being poetic. They truly believed it. They thought they had built a machine that had finally conquered the power of the ocean. That kind of pride, well, it has a funny way of coming back to bite you, and it played a huge role in what happened next. And that's really the big question, isn't it? 3 years, 2,000 workers pouring their lives into this thing, and it sinks in 2 hours and 40 minutes? It just seems impossible. But as we're about to see, it wasn't one thing that doomed the Titanic. It was a chain reaction, a perfect storm of 6 human errors that sealed its fate. Now, you might think, well, the people in charge must have been new to this. But nope, not at all. The captain, Edward Smith, he had 40 years of experience. The company, White Star Line, had a whole fleet of ships. The builders, they'd made over 500 of them. These guys were the best in the business. And honestly, that's what makes the mistakes they made even more unbelievable. This wasn't about inexperience. It was about overconfidence. Okay, so let's get into the first big mistake. It all started with pressure, big-time pressure, right from the moment they left the dock. See, the owners didn't just want the Titanic to get to New York. They wanted to get there in a record-breaking 7 days. They wanted the headlines, the glory. So what does that mean? It means Captain Smith was pushing the ship full steam ahead, way faster than he should have been, right into the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The very first decision was to choose speed over safety. So the ship is speeding through the night. But things are about to get a whole lot worse, because the next 2 mistakes happened one right after the other, compounding the danger as they sailed straight into an ice field. 6. Just let that number sink in. 6 different times that night, other ships radioed the Titanic to warn them about icebergs directly in their path. The danger wasn't a secret. It was being broadcast loud and clear. But the warnings never made it to the captain. So why didn't the captain know? Well, this is where it gets crazy. The wireless operators, the guys receiving these life-or-death warnings, were busy sending personal messages for the rich, first-class passengers. You know, having a lovely time, wish you were here. That was their main job because it made the company money. The crucial iceberg warnings were literally put in a pile to be dealt with later. And then there's mistake number 3. And honestly, you can't make this stuff up. The lookouts, the guys in the crow's nest whose only job was to spot danger, had no binoculars. The ship's binoculars were locked in a cabinet, and the guy with the key had gotten off the ship at the last port. Because of one single misplaced key, they didn't see the iceberg until it was right on top of them. Way, way too late. Okay, so just to recap. We're going too fast, we've ignored the warnings, and our lookouts can't see a thing. And now the moment of impact reveals a hidden flaw in the ship's construction that turns a bad situation into an absolute catastrophe. All right, let's talk about how this ship was actually put together. The giant steel plates of the hull were held together by millions of little metal pegs called rivets. The problem? It turns out many of them weren't made of strong steel, but of weaker, brittle cast iron. Think of it like this. Steel bends under pressure, but cast iron, especially when it's freezing cold, it just shatters like glass. So when that mountain of ice scraped along the side of the ship, it didn't just dent the hull. Pop, pop, pop. Those brittle rivets just snapped, the seams burst open, and the freezing Atlantic Ocean started pouring in not through one hole, but through a series of gashes all along the side. The unsinkable ship was doomed. At this point, the ship is done for. There's no saving it. The mission shifts to saving the people. But sadly, this is where things go from bad to so much worse. The final 2 mistakes would cost hundreds of lives. You see, the whole reason they called it unsinkable was because of these special watertight compartments in the hull. The idea was, even if a couple of them flooded, the ship would still float. It could handle 2, maybe even 3 compartments being breached. But the iceberg ripped through 4. Once water started spilling over the top of that 4th one, it was game over. The sinking was inevitable. This next part is just hard to believe. Look at these numbers. There were about 2,200 people on that ship, and there were only enough lifeboat seats for 1,178 of them. Not even enough for half. And the craziest part? It was technically legal. The safety regulations were so old and outdated that they got away with it. This meant that even with a perfect evacuation, hundreds of people were guaranteed to die.
And the evacuation was anything but perfect. That was the final, tragic mistake. It was pure chaos. Nobody had ever done a lifeboat drill. In the panic, lifeboats were being launched half empty. Some boats that could hold 60 people left with only 20. And the women and children first rule? It was mostly for the women and children in first class. Many passengers in third class were trapped below decks, their path to safety blocked.
So you add it all up. A ship going too fast, blind to warnings, built with a hidden weakness, and not enough lifeboats for everyone on board. It was a tragedy just waiting to happen. And those final moments, they unfolded with terrifying speed. The end came so fast. Just about an hour after hitting the ice, the first half-empty lifeboats were already in the water. By 2:18 a.m., the lights on the great ship just flickered and died. There was a moment of darkness and then nothing. She was gone. The final toll is just heartbreaking. More than 1,500 people lost their lives that night. For anyone who ended up in the water, there was no chance. The water temperature was -2 degrees Celsius. Survival time was less than 30 minutes. Captain Smith, for his part, went down with his ship, reportedly last seen trying to help others. So, here's the question I want to leave you with. Did an iceberg really sink the Titanic? Or was the iceberg just the final straw? Was the real cause a fatal mix of corporate pressure, terrible communication, overconfidence in technology, and a system that valued the rich over the poor? Was it a cascade of human errors that turned the unsinkable dream into an absolute nightmare?